Good afternoon, everyone. Today, in our series of Toppers Talk, we are going to talk to Prakhar Jain, who has secured All India rank 90. Congratulations, Prakhar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Prakhar is by education, he is an electrical engineer from IIT Kanpur, and this is his fourth attempt. And fortunately, he has been deeply associated with Next IAS. He has been a student of our test series also, essay test series also. So it has been such a pleasure for us to interact with Prakhar today. So Prakhar, like from engineering background from IIT, what has motivated you to turn towards civil services?
Ma'am, the answer lies in my background. As in, I come from Lalitpur, UP, which is a small town, and when you are living in such a town, you are always aware of the uh, figure rate of the administration in the district. So that is always something which stays in your mind. And secondly, when I was at IIT, I realized that there were things which I would like to do, and these kind of the kind of things I wanted to do, those will be more possible if I get into civil services. But even then, I was not entirely convinced. I got a job and I was working for 5 months, and that's when I was entirely convinced that I should probably invest my energy more in preparation for civil services rather than regretting I did not even try maybe few years down the line.
Yeah, that is something very interesting that you have said is like once we should try whatever we want to. Like you have joined the like job somewhere and then you realized no, this is not my cup of tea. So
Yeah.
that gives you 100% motivation towards civil services. To come with
Yes.
a dicey mind is something which is not that it's appropriate to be in civil services preparation. Okay, Prakhar, let's start with your optional. Like you are from IIT, you are an electrical engineer, and then why you have gone for a humanities optional? Like you have, I think sociology has been your optional.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, at my college, we have to do compulsorily 5 courses of humanities at least. So out of those 5 courses, I opted for sociology 3 times, and I
Mhm.
realized this was a subject I could. I liked the subject, the kind of things I was being taught, and the perspective I was gaining from it. I liked it. And when I started preparing for civil services, I talked to few of my friends who were already preparing, and I realized that electrical engineering as an optional subject could be a little burdensome in the sense that the syllabus is vast. And then, given that I was already familiar with the subject of sociology, and my friends were also preparing through sociology, so I was more confident in taking sociology up. And it's always good if you could learn new things as well. So yes.
Yeah, one of the most important filters to decide for your optional is your interest. So, like you said, like you had interest in sociology, but this time, if you see the results, many of the students who had the engineering optional subjects, they have also shown very good results this time. Especially your civil engineering students, they have many of them have got through.
Yes.
Okay, Prakhar, so once you have decided, like, yes, you will be preparing for civil services. So, how has been your journey? Like, what has been your strategy?
Okay. Ma'am, when I started preparing for civil services, for the first year, I was entirely clueless. I was not entirely sure how I had to approach the exam. I wish that was not the case, but anyways. So during the first 1 year or maybe another half year, I was more focused on improving my knowledge base. These were not the books, these were not the topics, these were not the subjects which I had read earlier, and they were entirely new to me. And once I had a strong knowledge base, I had read almost the every book which usually are prescribed by toppers. So once I read those books, even then I was not able to clear prelims in my first 2 attempts. And then I realized the importance of strategy. You cannot just march into an exam hoping that since you know things you'll be able to clear it. So I sat down once I realized that I was blundering in my prelim. It was something was definitely going wrong. I had to sit down. I went through the past year papers. I went through the ways I was thinking about question. I analyzed the kind of questions that were coming. So once I did that, I realized how I had to approach the prelims part. And similarly, when I was able to do the exercise for prelims, I also did the same for mains. So when once I had this part sorted, in my third attempt, I was able to get a rank. I was able to get prelims also with good marks. I was also able to get a rank, and then I had to make some things work a little better. Make sure that I would get a better rank I wanted to begin with.
Yeah, see, generally what happens is, Prakhar, like generally people think that for UPSC preparation is that you have to study for 10 hours, 15 hours, and like directionlessly many of us are studying. But at the end of the day, this is a competition and we have to have a strategy for it. So
True.
I think like you have also said that after 2 attempts, when you could not clear your prelims, then you sat down and then you made your strategy and then you realized that yes,
Yeah.
what was missing. Okay, so like prelims are approaching, Prakhar, 10th of say October, we are having the prelims this year. So what has been your strategy? What are the focus areas that you have, because after attempting, not getting through prelims for 2 times and then consecutively 2 times you have got selected. So it's like prelims, what should be the ideal strategy?
For those who are going to take prelims on the 10th of October, the best thing is to revise whatever you have read and not get into other things. But for those who are going to take prelims next year, it's good if you go through the past year questions. They are very, very important. You have to know what kind of questions UPSC asks, and that will help you decide the kind of things you want to read and how you should read them. Secondly, yes, everyone says this, I'll just repeat it. You have to keep your sources limited. The major reason behind it is that you are not going to revise all those sources if you go through many books. If there's anything which you're not able to revise at least 3 times before the exam, I don't think it's going to be useful for you. You're not going to remember it. So that is something which is also very important. And third is practice. You don't do anything without practice, not even in your life, and this is an exam which is going to be very important for you. Don't go out there without practice. Take mock tests, take questions, attempt questions. Don't just try to gather facts from the tests which you are taking. There's abundance of facts. You'll never be able to complete all the information of facts which you'll keep gathering them. So when you're taking tests, you have to make sure that you're able to find strategy wise, you're taking important things out of it. The way you attempt questions, how you eliminate options. Eliminating options is very important in prelims. So you will read many articles or YouTube videos on how to eliminate options, but not in every strategy will suit you. So this is the test papers are where you actually figure out what works for you. The way you eliminate options, you have to take it out from the test series. And one of my personal this is not going to work for everyone. I realized that I was better off if I was attempting at least 90 questions in prelims. Again, this is not something. This is not a this is not a figure. This is not a holy figure, but I have found that this was the case for me.
Yeah, because see, everyone has a unique strategy, and
Yes.
something works for somebody and it does not work for others. So that's very obvious, Prakhar. And you have rightly said that like overloading yourself with lot of content that is not required for this exam. Ultimately, this is a generalist exam, and we forget that, and we try to become specialist in each and every topic that we are studying, and that is what is one of the major, I think, faults that most of us are doing when we are preparing for civil services. Okay, so Prakhar, after your prelims, then comes your mains. So, what has been your strategy for mains? How you have prepared GS, because GS involves so many subjects. So, what has been your strategy for your GS?
Okay. So again, this is going to be personal to me because I flunked prelims twice, so I had way too much time to go through all the books and revise them multiple times. But going beyond that, there are fixed sources. There are those usual books and material which you are reading. So prepare notes for all the topics for means. Those, if you read something multiple times, you're going to write it down for sure in your test. So for means, for as far as remote studies is concerned, the books and resources are the ones which all of us know about. But you'll have to make sure that you have very small notes, very crisp notes made out of those resources, which you are able to revise multiple times, so that when you see a question, those facts, the information, the kind of information you want to put in your answers. That occurs to you in your first thought, because in mains you barely get any time to think. So it has to happen that the relevant information comes to you very soon. So make notes based upon every bullet points which we have in the syllabus, and revise it multiple times. And again, do practice. You'll soon know how many tests you have to attempt. Once you start feeling confident, maybe you could focus more upon revising rather than writing. But be sure that it happens once you're confident about your writing speed and everything.
Okay, you talked about limited sources, Prakhar, but when it comes to paper 2 and paper 3, where you need to put a lot of current affairs, as the questions are mainly current based in paper 2 and paper 3 especially. So what has been your strategy? Because current is also so vast, and nowadays because of so many platforms which are available there. So like students have a lot of content, and some of them get generally haywire. कहाँ जाना है, किसको पढ़ना है, पता ही नहीं है. So how you have managed paper 2 and 3?
For me, it was always about picking one magazine for current affairs. It could be anything, but just pick any one. You don't have to be very perfect in your answers. The kind of marks which you are awarded eventually, they don't reflect perfection. They reflect that a person was able to score reasonable. He or she was able to write reasonable content in many answers, and maybe a few would answers that he or she wrote. So don't aim for perfection. Find whatever material you have, derive short notes, make short notes out of it, revise it. And even yes, there will be many questions from current affairs. If you're not entirely sure of what it means, write the basics or the static part which you know about those things. Don't leave a question if you know anything about anything which has been asked in the question. If you know something, write that and be confident. You have to write you have to attempt those 20 questions, and even within the material that you have read, you can find something which you can put in your answers. And there's always something which you can write using all the things you have read over your preparatory period. So be confident during those 3 hours.
Okay, and then another thing is like current affairs magazine that you talked about. Were you continuously reading newspapers also?
I am not a very big fan of newspapers, majorly because I believe newspapers have their importance. One is able to make sure he or she stays in the environment that is needed. And secondly, we also get a flair of writing when we are reading newspapers. But personally, as I said earlier, if you're not able to revise anything 3 times, it's probably going to be useless for you because you're not going to remember it. So for newspapers, I used to read it just to make sense of everything that's happening around us, so that I don't feel clueless about the context of a question or those kind of things. But for current affairs, my major source was the magazines and not newspapers first. I would read newspaper, but only devote something like 30 minutes to it.
Okay, now let's talk about paper 4. Again, a very interesting paper, ethics paper. Yeah, what has been your strategy for that?
For ethics paper, there are 2 parts. One is the theory part, and second is the application in the form of case studies. So for the theory part, all the keywords which are mentioned in the syllabus and otherwise, which we can find through test papers or the previous questions of UPSC, I jotted down definitions for all the keywords. I had examples already prepared for those keywords. One was usually something which was more recent, more contemporary, and the other example was historical in the sense that it had some other dimension to it. So I had these kind of examples, and when writing answers to the theory part, you definitely have to write theory, but you have to substantiate it with your examples which you have already prepared. You could also write incidents from your own life and from those of people you have seen around you. And yes, as far as ethics is concerned, examples are plenty. We'll find it in day-to-day life, and obviously the kind of material that we are reading through, that is also sufficient. For the case studies, there we have to make sure that we structurize our answer, prepare any one particular framework, 1 or 2 frameworks for writing your case studies, and practice writing case studies. Go through some case studies, develop your own thinking, think about the kind of answers you could give, and again, the answer has to be balanced. You can't really give an unrealistic answer in case studies, and you also don't want to end on the wrong side of the line on in those questions.
Okay, Prakhar, sociology, you had interest in sociology, but what has been your strategy? Initially you finished with your optional, then you started your GS, or initially you started with parallelly you went ahead with your optional as well as GS, and what has been your special strategy for your optional sociology?
So sociology, I started it after I had some familiarity with the general studies because I did not want to read sociology in a vacuum. So once I was familiar with the general studies part, I started sociology. I read all the necessary material like Haralambos and Neil and other books which are necessary for the subject. And then I made my own notes for both paper one and paper two. That became my, after I read every book which was recommended, I prepared my own notes, and then those notes became my go-to source. So now every time I had to, so when in my third attempt I was writing the mains for the first time, I did not read any book except for the notes which I had made. Those notes were something which I had prepared from going through after going through all the resources, and I was able to revise that multiple times. So that helped me immensely. I was able to make sure that I was able to write down the names of thinkers which were needed, some case studies which I could put, and the examples also I was able to include in my answers. That helped me. That helped me.
Okay, so when did you start answer writing practice for your GS or for your optional? Was it from the very beginning you were doing it, or after some time when you realized, okay, now I can write answers?
So in my initial attempt, since I was not very good with prelims, I did not start answer writing then. But once I gained the confidence in prelims, I wrote few answers. I wrote papers for GS. I would write answers on my own and get them evaluated from my friends. And once the prelims were cleared, I joined test series for both general studies and sociology, and that's when I wrote answers which were evaluated by professionals and got their feedback.
Okay. So now let us talk about another interesting paper, that is your essay paper. That is also one paper where most of the engineers they think like हम तो लिख नहीं पाएंगे. So what has been your strategy of essay?
So last year when I took the exam, my marks in essay were around 124 or 5, something of this sort. Those are not very good marks. So again, this is where structures and frameworks come into play, at least for those of us who call ourselves engineers. Uh, it's good if we have some frameworks in mind for essays. There are some types of essays which usually come, and I believe we can come up with a framework for those. And then we have to make sure that we spread our essay across many dimensions, cover as many dimensions as possible for any particular topic. Now, there's always a thesis statement in the essay. We delve upon it in detail. This is how it works for me. For me, there's a thesis statement in the essay, so we delve upon it for some pages. We talk about many aspects, many dimensions of that. Then we also talk about some other the antithesis, the statement which was written there in the essay. You also talk about the antithesis, how that is not true, or how things could get wrong in that particular scenario. Now that you have talked about the problem, you have pointed out the problem. In the pre-conclusion part, I usually wrote about the kind of solutions you could give or come up with to make sure that the antithesis was something you could solve. And then there's always the conclusion, which is more or less a summary or your own thoughts about whatever you have come up with after writing so many things.
So Prakhar, you have joined our essay test series. So how fruitful it was for you to join this test series?
I knew I had to join a test series for essay because I wanted to improve my marks in it. And there were 5 tests. I distinctly remember that when I wrote the first test, it was very haphazard, as I would say now. There was no particular structure. I was writing whatever I was thinking. And when you pointed out certain things, the lack of flow or the lack of organization of thought. So I thought about it, and it was during the third test when I figured out what is going to work for me. The kind of flow I had to maintain, and the kind of way I had to organize my thoughts. That stuck to me in the third test. And in the two other tests, I made sure that I knew what I was doing. It worked for me in the fourth and fifth test, and that is what I repeated in the UPSC mains examination as well. I feel that would have been a good goal.
So we will be waiting for your score. Do share your score with us, Prakhar. And then let us come to another important, interesting part of UPSC examination, that is your personality test. So, what was your experience? Because we have a kind of a misnomer that the board is very strict and you have, they are going to grill you and all those things. So, you have met the board twice. So, how has been your experience?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we do hear that the board might grill you or will be very strict, but that is definitely not the case. In fact, not just twice, I had the chance to appear before the interview board twice, once for my forest examination last year. And in all the three instances, the board was very cordial. Their job was not to make sure, their job was not to put you in a pressure situation and then derive your tense you respond. They want you to be cool and calm. And then they try to see what kind of a person you are. In my forest interview, it went well, but in the interview that I took for civils last year, that was not a good experience for me because of the kind of things, the kind of way I presented myself. So in this particular personality test, I realized I needed some confidence booster. So that always comes when you have a good knowledge. It's not like they're going to judge you for those facts, for the kind of answers you put out for those questions. They're not going to judge you for your answers, but you yourself judge yourself for those answers. So you have to feel confident to get that confidence. You go through the things you have written in your draft, the current affairs that are important during that time. You read about it. You make sure that you're well prepared. Majorly because you want to stay confident in the interview. You don't want to be scared of what is coming next in the interview. So I feel this helped me this time. Last year I was not feeling very good about the interview because I wanted them to stay out of some topics. I was not very well prepared. And when they reached those topics, out of panic, I reacted probably not in a very good way. So this year I was more confident because I had a base, and then I was able to be calm and cool in the interview scenario. And apart from my experience, the board is always going to cordial, so that is going to help people once they are there.
Yes, we should always understand that they are there to select us, not to reject us. Yeah, so we have to present ourselves in the best possible manner and in a best genuine manner. So, Prakhar, it's like 2 times you could not clear the prelims, and 2 times you cleared the mains, and once you have also cleared your Indian Forest Service. Sorry, not Foreign Service, Indian Forest Service last year. So this journey from IIT, then 2 times sitting for the exam, not clearing it, and then again you are appearing for this exam, and then again appearing for even Forest Service. Chalo kahin to ho jayega. So what is like how you have kept yourself motivated, because 4 years is a very long journey.
Yes, it is. It is. Again, motivation is something which each individual finds in a very particular thing. For me, it was about the fact about the basics. There was a reason why I started preparing for the exam. So whenever I used to feel down, I used to go back to the reason which made me start preparing for the exam in the first place. For other people, it could also be their family, which was also the case in my part. And I was fortunate to be surrounded by my friends. They also helped me stay motivated. The positive energy is much required during the preparation part of this exam. You need it because of the kind of the process this examination comes with. So find your own motivation. It's go you everyone we are all different. Our motivations to start writing this examination is different. So whatever it is which made you begin preparing for this exam in the first place, stick to it and just remember the reason which helped you begin the process. You'll definitely end it with a bang.
Okay, Prakhar, another question, like nowadays almost everyone is used to various social platforms, social media platforms and all. So were you completely cut off from those social media platforms while you were preparing, or you were mixing up with your friends and you were using these platforms in a very positive manner?
I was not entirely cut off from social media while my preparation was going on. I I was active on different. I was active on Reddit, Quora, and even on Twitter. But again, my active time on those particular apps and those particular social media platforms was limited. Whenever I needed a break, I would just scroll down and see something, just change my mood out of the preparation part and make sure that I knew what was happening around me. But uh, for me, I was active on social media platforms, but yes, the interaction time, the time I was devoting to it was limited. It had its own utility.
Yes, and especially during pandemic years, last 2 years, last two attempts, if you are cut off from even social media, then sometimes we feel that we are all alone. Yeah. Okay, so Prakhar, I always ask this question to each and every individual who is sitting here. Like, what has been what do you think has been your uniqueness in the whole preparation? And what would you like to share with the future aspirants so that they also get motivated to be a topper like you?
I think one thing which helped me during the process was my willingness to accept my mistakes and make improvements upon it. Now, for example, in my case, when I came up with prelims 2 times, either I could live in denial or blame other things for it, or I had to make sure I found out what was going wrong and improve upon those aspects. So I was taking help from my friends who had qualified the exam, the seniors who had gotten into the service, and they all had their different perspectives. I could either so I had to. There was a point when I had to realize I was not doing good. I had to accept my faults. I had to accept the mistakes I was making, and then after taking inputs from many people, I picked whatever I felt was relevant to me, and then I had to apply it. It also happened even this year. Last year, for example, if I was clearing prelims till last year, I realized that I was coming short on personality test because that happened last year. Now again, could have let it. I could have considered it as a one-off event or let it go. But then I had to. I tried finding areas where I could improve. I talked to many people. I tried to find out the corrections I needed to make, which I think I did make at least in some parts this time. So yes, find your mistakes and improve upon them.
You have been part of our interview guidance program also, Prakhar.
Yes, ma'am.
So how has it helped you?
As we discussed earlier, interview board is not there to grill you or to make you feel uncomfortable and then judge you based upon that. They're going to be very cordial and make you comfortable. So this is something which you realize when you're part of the interview guidance program. And then, as I said, you have to feel confident in what comes when you're prepared on the things you've written in your draft and the current affairs which are happening. So that also came when I was preparing for the interview and the material which I got in the
Good. So, Prakhar, wish you all the best and hope to see you as a very bright young bureaucrat. And again, before we leave, is there any platform where if some aspirants want to contact you, can they do that?
Yes, ma'am. I am available at my Facebook or Instagram or even Twitter. As I said, I'm very social media savvy, though at least I scroll down. So those are the platforms I'm available at, and whenever I get any query, I do respond. So if anyone actually wants to reach out to me on for certain queries, I'm available and I'm more than willing to help you out.
Thank you, Prakhar, and all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.